Welcome, dear friends, to Cardiac Radio in another program, Inner Journey with Paul and Stephen. Yes, we are here studying and doing this inner discovery with Paul and Stephen, the book psychographed by Chico Xavier, the medium, by the spirit mentor, Emmanuel. Same author as the book. 2,000 years ago, 50 years later. Renunciation, Hail Christ, Paul and Stephen. It's not only about the story of Paul of Tarsus, but about the call of the Christ to you and I. When we are traveling in this book, in time, we are verifying ourselves. You remember that Saul of Tarsus, the doctor of the law in Jerusalem, discovered the Master in the road on the road to Damascus. And after being blind, then healed by Ananias, he finally, he was able to encounter his mentor Gamaliel in the desert and then made friends. Aquila and Prisca, weavers. He became a weaver. Humbling himself for 3 years, he decides to go back to Damascus. He walks on foot. And in chapter 3, about struggle and humiliation, in part 2, Emmanuel says that the journey went smoothly. He was in his solitude, but feeling invisible powers giving him consoling inspirations. Who were they? Yes, Emmanuel confirms he could not define that spiritual state, but the fact was that Stephen remained nearby as a loyal companion under Jesus' guidance from then on. Who were they? Stephen would follow him in spirit for 30 years, continually renewing Saul of Tarsus' strength as he carried out the redemptive task of the gospel. And Emmanuel says, in this way, Jesus willed for the first victim of Jerusalem to remain forever united to the first executioner of the converts to his doctrine of life and redemption. It's so common that the higher spirits, when they find themselves in the afterlife, they come back to help those who are here, who even persecuted them. The same happened to Abraham Lincoln. In the Spiritist magazine, we have in 2009 a whole issue dedicated to Abraham Lincoln. And there you're going to read a psychography brought by an American medium telling about the discarnation of Lincoln. And then, as soon as he found himself in the spiritual realm, he came to the physical plane to guide the life of the very executioner, John Booth, who killed him. And then, when Booth is killed, he comes to the spiritual realm. We're going to find for the next period of time, Lincoln guiding John Booth to the right pathway. What a beautiful, wonderful knowledge for us. Forgiveness, love of the enemies, proof of our next step, proof of our evolution. Saul of Tarsus, now guided by Stephen and Abigail, directly under the guidance of Jesus, goes back to Damascus. He sees Ananias. He sees the people in that circle, and he gets to know that the persecution just went widespread. He tries to talk to the people in the synagogue, and they are furious. They want to arrest him. But he's very intelligent. He knows the laws. He says, "You can't arrest me. Do you have a letter? Plus, I I am not only doctor of the law, but I'm also a Roman citizen." And well, he talks to everybody in a very eloquent way. People are spellbound by powerful and inexplicable magnetic forces. Saul looked intently at them one by one, revealing the strength of his powerful character. And then he finalizes by blessing everybody and leaving. When he left the synagogue, he saw Ananias, anxious for his caring advice, and Ananias said, "You better go away. How do you feel about leaving in a disguised way so you can leave the cities, because they're going to arrest you, they're going to kill you?" And then he did. He left overnight. 3 hours later, they came to see Ananias. They beated him up and asked him, "Where is he?" He says, "Saul must be with Jesus." So interesting that we're going to see that when Saul of Tarsus escaped, he was being supported by the very people that he persecuted before. What a turn of events. And this may happen in our lives. The people whom we hurt may later be the ones who will be helping us. So we need to watch out. He kept on running away. The journey was very difficult. He was traveling from Damascus to Jerusalem. How long does it take? On foot, 3 days nonstop. Driving, almost 5 hours. Mileage, 200 plus miles. It's a lot of distance. Of course, he didn't do it at once. He stopped in Galilee. So he's going north, Damascus, then down to Jerusalem. In between, we find Capernaum, where Jesus preached, where Jesus healed. He's there, he's talking to Levi. Yes, who got to know of Saul's story and was delighted about it. Many people say, "I want to go to Jerusalem to see the very land where Jesus was sacrificed." Why? Don't you feel like going to the cities where he preached and healed, other than to the place where he was martyred? When we're really aligning with the Christ, we don't want to see how he died. We want to see how he lived. And that's what Saul of Tarsus did. He stayed there for 2 days in gentle rapture without revealing who he was. He looked for Levi, who welcomed him with delight. He revealed his love and knowledge of the gospel. and he learned about many things. Then he went seeing Mary Magdalene. A few days later, he rested in Nazareth. Saul was at the gates of the holy city of the Israelites, exhausted and fatigued. Jerusalem, other no less, had no other no less painful surprises awaiting him in Jerusalem. When he is there, he wants to see his sister, Delilah. People look at him and say, "Who are you?" They don't recognize the brother in him and shoo him away. Then he goes visit a friend, Alexander, who was a relative of Caiaphas and his colleague at the Sanhedrin. And in this dialogue, oh man, we get to know that people were slandering about Saul of Tarsus, saying that he went mad and sick. So then he asks about his family, and they say, well, your family, Jacob and Delilah, were ashamed of hearing the news from Syria and moved to Jerusalem, from Jerusalem to Cilicia. Your mother learned about your order of arrest, and she died in Tarsus. Your father, who educated you so carefully, expecting your mind to glean the highest honors of the Jewish people, spends his day downcast and unhappy. Tired of enduring the people's sarcasm in Jerusalem, your friends have become withdrawn and humiliated after having looked for you without success. Doesn't such a picture pain you? Wouldn't such heartache as this be enough for you to come to your senses? And then Alexander asks him, do you mean to persist in your error, Saul? And Saul of Tarsus says, I do not feel I am in error. I think there is a misunderstanding. I too am in a painful situation, but the Master will not withhold his aid. Ever since my childhood, I've tried to fulfill my duties without wavering. But if I must resort to the balance of my wealth in order to reach Jesus' light, I will renounce the esteem of the world itself. I tell you this. Would you do that? Would you? Would we? Would you do that? So there, in this first half of the chapter, we'll do the second half next week. We have two main highlights. When Saul of Tarsus says, I will renounce the esteem of the world itself. Would we do it? Often we don't. When people ask you, oh, is that a church that you go to? We say yes. No, it's not a church. A spiritist center is not a church. A spiritist center is a spiritist center, a spiritual center. But what is it? Well, come and see. Imagine if Chico Xavier said that the spiritist center was a church. It's not true. Are we helping the dissemination of the spiritist teachings by hiding about it? Yes, we're going to lose friends, maybe jobs, maybe fortune. Big deal. We have been there, done that so many lives. This life is all about the new. So, question for us as the first exercise. Can we renounce the esteem of the world to fulfill God's will? How many of us are constantly teased to do what the world does, or else? If you're in a party, oh, I have to drink, or else. Well, if people don't appreciate you because you don't drink, those people are mentally ill. Because people are not less because they don't drink. If they discriminate us because we're not in the gossip mill, we bless them. We don't enter the gossip circle. So, can we renounce the esteem of the world? Well, Alexander tells Saul, "You are very disturbed. Only a madman could have acted this way." Well, Saul of Tarsus understands it's fruitless to talk to Alexander. He, 2 minutes later, he leaves. And now he thinks, where should I go? Well, to the house of the way, where Jesus' disciples are, Peter's house. And he says, whoa, I remember when I went back there with Zadok to listen to Stephen. How everything was now happening in reverse, says Emmanuel. The critic of yesterday had now returned to be criticized. The judge turned defendant's heart was immersed in singular anxieties. How would they receive him at the Church of the Way? Saul then stopped in the front of a humble house, and he saw Prochorus opening the door and asked for Peter. Prochorus went inside. Knowing that this was Saul of Tarsus, he was afraid. When James, the son of Alphaeus, heard about it, he was like, we can trust him. We cannot trust him at all. John said, I pray to Jesus for enlightenment. And Peter said, how can we know if he is true? Our proof lies only in him. But in my opinion, since we're not in charge of a legacy that does not belong to us personally, we must proceed with prudence. So they say, let's go back and tell him, go back, Procors, and say that he can come later. And then as soon as Procors tells Saul, who was anxious, he says, yes, Peter is right. And then Procors, struck by his humility, asked, haven't you brought any sort of introduction from Ananias in Damascus? Like a letter of recommendation, right? And what does Saul reply? I already have the masters. How so? Jesus told me in Damascus that he would show me how much I must suffer for the love of his name. We pause and ask ourselves, do we know that we are also being invited to this direction? To suffer in the name of a bigger cause. But people don't want it. They want things that are easy. They want to participate in good causes if it's convenient. But that's not true charity. True charity comes with a lot of effort, with order. So our homework today is twofolded. One, we're going to think ourselves, can I renounce the esteem of the world to fulfill God's will? And am I ready to suffer the impediments of life in order to fulfill the plan of the Christ in my life? We're not talking about being spiritual workers, spiritist practitioners. We're talking about our daily lives. Parents, for example. People want to be parents, but they don't want to take care of their children. A babysitter will take care of their children. A caregiver at a daycare is going to take care of their children. Unfortunately, This is not the way we're going to renounce the esteem of the world. It's not the way in which we're going to suffer for the cause of love. And what do we mean by that? We mean that to truly love, we need to renounce. Today, the program talks about Saul of Tarsus, struggling but renouncing the old man inside of him to become anew. We cannot become anew if we keep on cherishing the old. So you and I today have exercises to be done. When we come back next week, we're going to see Saul of Tarsus coming back and meeting with the disciples. And then we'll see other lessons, how he proceeded from thereafter. People usually read the Bible and think that the day he decided to follow the Christ, things just unfolded. Not quite. He had to advocate for his new cause, the cause of love, the cause of the Christ. If you have any question or comment, feel free to write here in the platform that you're watching this, or at cardiacradio@gmail.com. For now, we wish you many blessings, and until next week with another inner journey with Paul and Stephen.